Granoff Chapter 2, Fund Types. Our coverage, the three basic fund types of a state or local government. Please note, students must quickly become comfortable with this material, which includes three basic fund types and 9 funds. Let's look at the definition of fund. In governmental and not-for-profit accounting, the term fund has a different meaning than it does in business accounting. Business accounting, the term fund typically refers to working capital, and only a single accounting entity is used to account for all activities of the business. Now, individuals also use funds. College, emergency, retirement, Christmas, household. These are used to keep assets in separate buckets. Otherwise, it would be easy to use assets for the wrong purpose. Fund accounting forms the basic building block of governmental accounting and financial reporting. Look at a fund as a device that an entity uses to keep track of specific sources and uses of funds. For governmental and not-for-profit accounting, become very comfortable with this definition. A fund is a physical entity and an accounting entity. Each fund has its own self-balancing set of accounts from which financial statements can be prepared. Our next slides look at state and local government funds. Later in the semester, we will look at not-for-profit funds. 3 fund types. Governmental, a generic classification used by GASB to refer to all funds other than proprietary or fiduciary. No guarantee that the funds will be reimbursed for services rendered. Proprietary funds, government generally makes initial contribution, but thereafter the fund is expected to pay its own way through fees or services rendered, also referred to as business-like or commercial type funds. Fiduciary, any fund held by government in a fiduciary capacity. Since it is not the government's money, it is not expendable for the government's own programs. We're back to 3 fund types, 9 funds. Governmental funds, 5. General, special revenue, capital projects, debt service, and permanent. Proprietary, 2. Internal service and enterprise. Fiduciary, 2. Agency and trust. Governmental funds, or overview, basis of accounting, modified accrual, measurement focus, current financial resources, also referred to as financial flow focus or spending focus. Only current assets and liabilities are generally included on the balance sheet. Capital assets and long-term liabilities are not included. Reports expenditures, not expenses, of appropriations. Fund balance, net current assets, measures available spendable resources. Fund balance equals current assets minus current liabilities. Fund balance is increased by revenues and other financing sources, decreased by expenditures and other financing uses. Governmental fund operating statements present these increases and decreases in net current assets. Required financial statements for governmental funds, the balance sheet, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Reconciliation of the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance of governmental funds to the statement of activities at the governmental wide level. This connects the governmental to the government wide. This is an application of GASB 34, the dual purpose, the dual reporting. Back to our 5 governmental funds. General, the operating fund of the government embraces most major governmental functions, accounts for all resources that are not required to be accounted for in other funds. In essence, it accounts for all unassigned resources. It's the most significant fund. Every state and local government must have one and only one general fund. Special revenue funds account for revenues that are restricted or committed to expenditure for purposes other than debt service or capital outlays. Gasoline tax, hotel occupancy tax, revenues, grants, lottery fund proceeds. The revenues are restricted or committed for special purposes. Capital projects funds account for financial resources that are restricted, committed, or assigned to expenditures for capital outlays. Building a park, building a new courthouse, building a new police building. Debt service funds account for financial resources that are restricted, committed, or assigned for payment of interest and principal on long-term debt. Permanent funds account for resources provided that are legally restricted so that only the earnings, not the principal, also called corpus, may be used to support the government's programs. Let's look at proprietary funds. Internal service funds account for activities in which goods or services are provided to other departments of the same government or other governments for a charge on a cost reimbursement basis. Central stores, central computing, motor pools, and printing, reported as governmental activities in the government-wide statements, GASB 34, because they primarily benefit the government. These funds have internal users. Enterprise funds account for activities in which goods or services are provided to the general public for a charge, reported as business-type activities in the government-wide financial statements. Examples: electric, water utilities, airports, parking garages, transportation systems. Proprietary fund overview. Basis of accounting: full accrual accounting, operated like normal for-profit businesses. Measurement focus: economic resources. All assets and liabilities, both current and non-current, are included in the balance sheet. Accounts for expenses because it's full accrual accounting. Records depreciation expense. The fund equity or net position. Net position equals assets minus liabilities. This is increased by revenues and other financing sources, decreased by expenses and other financing uses. The fund equity for proprietary funds, separated into net investment in capital assets, restricted and unrestricted components. Proprietary funds required financial statements. These are similar to for-profits: statement of net position, statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, statement of cash flows. Let's look at fiduciary funds. Agency funds account for financial resources in which the government is acting in an agency capacity. The government holds assets on behalf of another government. Accounting is simple. Assets equal liabilities. No expenses, no revenues. No fund equity. Examples: tax agency funds, certain special assessment funds, and pass-through agency funds. Overview of fiduciary funds. Both trust and agency funds account for assets held by the city in a trustee capacity or as an agent for individuals, private organizations, other governments, and or other funds. These are not included in the government-wide statement because they're pass-throughs. They don't belong to the government. Full accrual accounting, measurement focus is all economic resources. Trust funds. Each trust is classified for accounting measurement purpose as either a governmental fund or proprietary fund. Funds can either be expendable or non-expendable. Types: pension and employee benefits, investment, private purpose. Pension and other employee benefit trust fund accounts for financial resources in which the government or other designated trustee is acting in a trustee capacity for the employees of the government to provide retirement benefits. Investment trust accounts for external investment pools in which the assets are held for other external governments along with funds of the sponsoring government. So we're investing as a pool instead of each department making investments, or in the state, maybe each county making investments. We're rolling it into a pool. reports the assets, liabilities, net assets, changes in assets corresponding to the equity of the external participants. Private purpose trust funds. All trust funds other than pension and investment.